Welcome to Law You Should Know. The law affects every aspect of our lives, our home, our jobs, and our recreational activities. Now you can learn about the law and how to protect yourself against the loss of your liberty or property. Learn how to stand up for your rights and seek compensation when you have been wronged. Your host for Law You Should Know is attorney Kenneth J. Landau with the Mineola law firm of Shane, Dox, Denisi, and Corker. He's a member of the Committee on Professional Ethics of the Bar Association of Nassau County and counsel to the Nassau Academy of Law. And now, here is your host for Law You Should Know, attorney Kenneth J. Landau.
Hi, this is Ken Landau, and welcome to Law You Should Know. Today we'll be talking about children and divorce, and this program will be interviewing a psychologist who works with children in divorce situations, and this program can also be used by attorneys for CLE credit. We'll give you some more information, and just be sure to record the credit later in the show, the program number. Our guest is Dr. Leah R, and she's a psychologist and a forensic psychologist and also a child psychologist, and works with children in divorce before, during, and after, and also acts as an expert for the courts weighing the issues of children in a divorce. Dr. Younger, welcome to Law You Should Know.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Perhaps you could just explain to our audience as a start what exactly is a forensic psychologist.
So a forensic psychologist is a psychologist who takes the knowledge and theory, research and science of psychology and then applies it to a legal matter, which means some forensic psychologists get involved with criminal cases and others get involved with civil. My area of specialty is the civil cases, which means I'm working with families who are involved in court for matters of custody and divorce.
And we're going to focus our discussion mostly on how divorce impacts children and what some of the issues, interaction might be between psychology and divorce litigation. But just start us out by explaining what a divorce is in your view.
Absolutely. So in my view, the legal terminology of divorce in and of itself doesn't really carry meaning. What's meaningful, especially to the children, are the experiences that the children have leading up to the legal act of divorce and also following what happens after that divorce. So there's a lot of research out there that shows us when we look at outcome studies and factors that predict children's growth and adjustment as opposed to maladjustment, one of the key factors is the children's exposure to parental conflict.
And this conflict can arise just in a difficult marriage or difficult child rearing situation or during or after an actual divorce?
Absolutely. The conflict can occur at any point, and so there's going to be this ongoing process throughout a child's life where they are responding to the events and circumstances around them. So what that means is we want to look at what was the pre-divorce life like for the children, but then even as the divorce is ongoing, pre it being finalized and settled, as the psychologist, I want to make sure that the parents are doing everything they can to continue to provide for the children, which mostly entails meeting their needs and providing stability.
And what kind of needs do they have?
So there's three main areas of needs that we'll consider because I follow the biopsychosocial model. So we want to think about biological needs, like making sure that they're brought to the pediatrician appointments, that whatever medication they're supposed to be taken occurs. Psychological things like mental health appointments, meeting with counselors, making sure that we're promoting their psychological adaptation and growth. And then social needs, we think about their friends, the school, the community. We want to try to prevent as much disruption as possible in the children's lives.
And what is the range of disruption, let's say, in a divorce?
So,
whether it's an actual legal divorce or it's, there's just not harmony in the house.
Right. So the range can be great, right? So we can think about cases where families are able to get divorced and prevent as much disruption as possible. So at minimum, we're talking about a change in schedule when the children are seeing the parents, a change in location. They'll now be living in 2 homes. But there are some families where the children don't change homes. It's the parents who change homes. They come in and they come out based on their schedule. So...
And what are the conflict? What about self-esteem? Does it aside from the physical and who's minding the store? Is there a change in the psychological makeup of the child or their self-esteem?
That really is going to depend on the individual factors of the child. So again, it's that pre, concurrent, and post. So children that are vulnerable from the get-go because of their own idiographic issues, if they have learning disabilities or other impairments, that will contribute, obviously. But other children who are psychologically healthy pre-divorce and continue to have the sense that they'll be able to continue their relationship with each parent and their needs will be met, there's less of a risk.
And what is the best time to, let's say, tell, the children that there may be a change on the horizon?
So you want to consider the ages of the children, which goes hand in hand with how much you are able to tell them about what will happen. The last thing you want to do is introduce the idea that there will be change, but not able to explain what the change will look like, because then you're giving them ambiguous data, and that can induce a lot more anxiety. So when possible, you want to keep it focused on data that you already know. So if you don't know the long-term plan, but you know what's due to happen in the next month or so, keep it focused to the next month or so.
And the change in some circumstances could be, or the news could be welcome to the child, depending on how much conflict is going on in the family.
Right. In my experience, most of the children that I've worked with knew something was going to happen even before the parents knew it. So children are really adept at picking up on the dynamic between the parents. And with exposure today to television and movies and their peers, a lot of children are familiar with this idea of divorce, so it's not so shocking per se. But what's really important is that parents make sure children actually understand what divorce means. So I have some children that I work with through evaluation work, and they don't really understand it. They think parents are going through divorce and then they're going to get back together. So you want to speak with the children and really understand what is their idea, what schema do they have in mind of what divorce looks like, and correct any erroneous beliefs.
Do children naturally have that conception that they're hoping that there'll be a happy ending to the divorce? And
so that's another question that really goes back to what the pre-divorce experience was like. So I work with one family where the pre-divorce experience really protected the children from conflict. They weren't exposed to it. So as far as they're concerned, they don't think there's a need for divorce. They want it to go back to the way that it was because for them it was better. Whereas with other families where the children are exposed to fighting and police officers getting involved in court orders and removal from the home and all kinds of chaos, they experience some relief when there's stability because of the divorce.
And you're trying to help work with the family in some cases to try to make it as less destabilizing as possible for the child or the children?
So my role really changes from case to case. In some cases, I'm the court-appointed custody evaluator, in which case I'm working for the court, and my job is to present the court with data about the children, the parents, and the family so that the court can rule on custody. In other cases, if I'm working together with both parents as a neutral mental health professional, then I'll be working with them to help them promote their children's growth and adjustment. In some cases, only one parent comes to me and says, I'm concerned about my children, I want to work on my parenting skills, and then we'll only focus on that parent's skill set.
And as a psychologist, how are you evaluating that skill set, or what factors may come into it?
So
on your recommendation, if you're asked to opine
on what factors contribute to a parent's skill set?
No, your decision on who might be the better custodial parent, if you have to suggest that.
Right. So I like that distinction that you made, because psychologists don't make that decision. At most, if the court allows it, we can offer a recommendation, and many courts don't allow it. So the judges will be specific about whether or not they want the recommendation. But regardless, when we think about parenting capacity, which is really what a custody evaluation is about, we want to think about the parent's ability to be independent, the parent's own stability. We look at the parent as a person, separate from the parent as a parent. So parent as a person, we look at mental health and consistency of job, consistency of care for themselves, medical care, those sort of things. When we look at the parent's parenting, I want to think about how adept are they at understanding the needs of the children? How skilled are they at providing for those needs? Historically, what responsibilities did they have? And then also another really important factor to consider is how open is the parent to receiving feedback from other professionals like the children's teachers, mental health professionals if they're involved, and other.
And also as part of that, how adept or willing they are to keep the other parent in the picture?
Absolutely. It's important, like we said earlier, that to promote the children's adjustment post-divorce, that they maintain a healthy relationship with both parents. So one of the things that I'm always interested in learning is how much is one parent interested in promoting that? How active are they in doing it? How passive are they in doing that? And one of the best ways to learn that information is paying attention to how the parent responds to the comments the children will make. So for example, if one of the children says, "Oh, Daddy was mean today," how does the other parent respond? Are they excited by it? Do they ignore it? Do they explore it? Do they confirm it?
Or exploit it?
Right.
And is it somewhat reliable? Is your opinion subjective, or has it become objective?
My opinion?
Yes.
So what I try to do when I'm being asked to provide an opinion to the court is maintain a neutral role as much as possible, which means built into my policies and procedures are tasks that maintain that neutrality. So, for example, if I'm doing an evaluation, I'll alternate the meetings, meet with parent 1, meet with parent 2, as opposed to meet with parent 1 multiple times and then parent 2. And there are other aspects that try to maintain that balance between the data that I collect. So if parent 1 provides collateral sources for me to speak with, parent 2 has that same opportunity. So we try to keep whatever conclusions I reach based on equal amounts of data.
And you're also going to try to project this into the future given the changed nature of their family.
So something that's really important is that psychologists can't predict the future, right? We don't have a crystal ball. And a lot of us get in trouble by making predictions. So at best, we can talk about risk factors. We can talk about prognosis. We can comment on a concern that we have based on the data that's available in front of us.
Okay. We're going to take a short break now. As I mentioned, lawyers can earn CLE credit by listening to this program. I'll give you more information later in the program. We're talking to Dr. Leah R. Younger. She's a forensic psychologist and a child psychologist with offices in Garden City and Manhattan, and we're talking about children and divorce. You're listening to Law You Should Know here on 90.3 WHPC, the voice of Nassau Community College, and also this program is available over the Internet and as a podcast at nccradio.org. We'll be back in a moment.
This portion of programming on WHPC is brought to you on behalf of the Nassau County Bar Association, helping both the public and lawyers since 1899. They are the largest suburban bar association in the country. The Nassau County Bar Association offers clinics where you can meet privately with an attorney to prevent or solve legal problems involving Hurricane Sandy, foreclosure, wills, or elder law. Speakers on almost any legal topic are also available to schools or community groups. They can also help lawyers advance their legal careers and offer a place to network. Learn more about the Nassau County Bar Association by calling 516-747-4070 or visit nassaubar.org.
To buy your home, you became a house hunting ace, learned about loans, scoured neighborhoods, and asked the right questions. If you manage that, you can get your retirement plan on track. Visiting aceyourretirement.org can help. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Once again, we continue with Law You Should Know. From the Mineola Law Firm of Shane, Dox, Denise, Corker, and Sauer, here is attorney Kenneth J. Landau.
Hi, this is Ken Landau, and welcome back to Law You Should Know. Today we're talking about children and divorce, and attorneys can earn CLE credit through the Nassau Academy of Law, who can be reached at nassaubar.org or at 516-747-4464. There may be a slight administrative fee, and you'll get a code at the end of this program, but otherwise we're trying to present information to the general public and to attorneys about children and divorce. My guest is Dr. Leah Younger, who is a child psychologist and a forensic psychologist with offices in Garden City and Manhattan. Dr. Younger, you had mentioned that you also try to form a view as to how the parents are going to keep the other parent involved with the children, assuming it's a good thing.
Right.
So what do you look to for that, to try to evaluate that? And what do you encourage the parents to do before, during, and after for the best interests of the child?
Okay, so the obvious thing that comes to mind is actual physical time that the parents and the children spend together. So I'm curious about a parent's attempt to block that time, if they cancel it at last minute, if they make the children unavailable. But if we really take a step back and think about the precursor to that, what that leads us to is, how does a parent regard the other parent to the children? So earlier we talked about if a child makes a negative comment about one parent, how does the other parent respond? But in a similar vein, we want to think about how does one parent talk about the other parent? Do they expose the children to derogatory comments? Do they allow the children to overhear conversations where there's fighting? We also want to think about, does that parent go to lengths and efforts to promote the children's relationship with each parent? How do they deal with that?
And are there sometimes conflicts of parenting styles that come up before, during, and after?
Yes, so that's a question that I get a lot of the time. If parents have different styles of parenting. So typically we'll talk about the best interests of the children being that there's consistency in both households. So when possible, I'll try to, when I'm in the helping role as opposed to the evaluative role, I'll try to help parents collaborate on their parenting styles and their parenting strategies, because like we said earlier, one of the best predictors of a child's adjustment is when things are stable. So if there's stability between the two households itself, that's very helpful.
And it's really stability is so important in a marriage where there's hostility during the course of a divorce and also after a legal divorce.
Right, absolutely. So when we're talking about making changes to the access schedule, meaning when the children spend time with each parent, a lot of times if I'm working with an infant or a toddler, the schedule that's appropriate when they're 2 to 5 is very different than the schedule that would be appropriate when they're 12 to 15. So inevitably, if the divorce happens when the children are younger, there's going to be changes over the course of that child's life, and you want to be mindful about when those changes are implemented. So, for example, you don't want to do it right before the first day of school. You don't want to do it right before midterms or finals. You want to try to input change when there are other factors of ongoing stability.
And do courts or do you try to encourage shared parenting, almost like 50-50, where they alternate weeks or split the weeks if it's physically and economically and psychologically possible?
So you're touching on a hot button legal issue, which I'm obviously not able to comment on because I'm not a lawyer, but I can share with you.
As a psychologist.
Right. So I can share with you that my understanding is that there are different perspectives of different courts on the standard, the presumption of shared parenting. From the mental health perspective, I think there's a presumption that the best interest is for the child to have healthy, adaptive relationships with both parents. What that looks like specifically will evolve as the child ages and grows up, and really will be a function of each parent's availability to be present.
And if one parent earns more money or can bring them other, extra opportunities or exposure or travel or activities, is that a factor that comes into it?
It depends on what you're comparing, who you're comparing it to. Forgive me.
To the other spouse,
right? So
the other parent.
So you always want to think about what does the other parent bring to the table? Because what you're talking about is if there's a moneyed spouse, right? Of course, that spouse could present a lot more in terms of, like you're saying, travel and fun.
Playing Scrabble compared to a trip to Europe.
Right, exactly. So that's going to be the great debate. The money parent will say, I can offer more. But what I would always try to encourage that parent to do is really look at what does the other parent have to offer? And chances are, if the other parent is offering playing Scrabble, there's nothing wrong with playing Scrabble.
Okay. And let's do the flip side of this, where parents cannot restrain themselves, cannot get along with each other, which might lead to the divorce and maybe even to a manipulation of the child or what the child says to manipulate the divorce and the findings of the court.
Right. So to the first part about parents communicating and having difficulty with that, a role that I sometimes play is called a parenting coordinator. So as a parenting coordinator, my job is to help parents follow their parenting plan if one is already in existence. And really what I'm doing is helping them solve disputes in a non-litigious way. So that entails teaching them communication skills, how to approach a subject, how to have both parents participate in the decision-making process in a effective, time-smart way without stalling. And I think the second part that you were getting at is what effect it has on children if they are continuously exposed to hostility and to negativity about the other parent. And the risk that we run there is that if that happens over the course of time, there's potential that the child will lose sight of their own independent thoughts and adopt that of what they're exposed to.
A certain amount of brainwashing.
So it, again, it could be, and it depends on what happens. And you always want to be careful before you jump to reach conclusion. You want to evaluate if a child, for example, is resisting seeing another parent. Before you jump to say, oh, it's this or oh, it's that, you really want to look at what is the child's relationship like with that parent. What history do they have together? Has there been things that occurred that might justify or explain the reason for the child's resistance?
Could there sometimes be difference in their approach to discipline, that one is stricter, one is more lax with fun or games or watching TV?
Absolutely. So what you're getting at is sometimes children will resist, not because objectively, as a professional, we'd say there's a problem with the other parent, but because kids like to go where there's prizes and where there's treats and where they have the sense that they get what they want. Many children appreciate an environment, or at least they think they do, that has less rules and less structure. So yes, it's possible that a child will resist going to the other household that is more disciplined.
Can there be a problem with one that's too lax or too disciplined? Is there like a happy medium?
So I think that any approach that is to an extreme is always going to be problematic or difficult. Ideally, whatever approach you have, you want it to be well balanced so that you're not just pursuing the approach, you're pursuing the approach that works for the child that's in front of you.
And what are some of the services you provide as a forensic psychologist or a child psychologist to the family or the children before, let's say, during and after?
Okay, so I'd say that there's 4 main categories that can be provided at any one of those 3 markers. So if we're talking about therapeutic services, that would include individual child therapy, family therapy, couples therapy, post-divorce couples therapy, and the goal of each of those is going to be to help the person that's in front of me adjust, cope, adapt, and navigate that experience. There's also another kind of therapeutic approach called therapeutic visitation and reunification. So those are interventions that would happen when there's an identified problem in the parent-child relationship. We're trying to target whatever that issue is, help the parent improve their parenting skills, help the child express whatever it is that they're finding difficult, and improve that dynamic. Another area is parenting coordination, which I went through before, but it's basically about addressing parental disputes. I'd say the third category is consulting work, where I can be retained by a lawyer to be their mental health consultant and weigh in on the psychological perspective as they report the different issues to me.
And you're going to evaluate all the parties and the child's.
So it depends on the role. If I'm a mental health consultant for the mother's lawyer, I have no access to the father or the children. I'm working as part of the mother's legal team. If I'm a court-appointed custody evaluator, then I evaluate all members of the family.
So your goal and your perspective and the information you have to work with is going to be a little different.
Right. It varies from role to role, as does confidentiality, the focus of the work that I'm doing, my ability to make recommendations, and my ability to intervene.
We only have about 2 minutes left in the program, but from your experience and your background, what information would you like to convey to children or young adults who may be experiencing a hostile situation before, during, or after?
So I think the most important thing, as always, is going to be communication. So I'm hoping that children are in an environment where they feel comfortable talking about their experiences, sharing it with their parents, and cueing their parents in to what life is like for the children. Just like I'm hoping that parents will take a moment to think about how what they're doing is affecting the children.
And they also should have access to mental health services through their medical services, through the social worker or a psychologist in their school?
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Okay. And what tips or advice do you have for parents on how they can do less harm and keep their own situation, and especially promote the child's situation before, during, and after?
So the two main factors are going to be protecting the children from conflict and doing everything you can to promote the children having healthy relationships with both parents.
And also whatever conflict you have, to do it away from the children.
Protect the children from that. So that means not fighting in front of them, not sharing emails with them, not exposing them to argumentative phone calls.
And they can always use someone like you or someone through the courts to act as a mediator to try to work out some of these issues to make it a win-win situation.
Right, including developing an access schedule that's developmentally appropriate. So it's not just about a parent saying, I want this percentage of time, but it becomes about what schedule works for the children.
And certain trade-offs and sharing to work for the benefit of the child.
That's right.
How can our audience find out some more information about you?
So I'm working on my website. It's not up yet. So in the interim, my profile on LinkedIn has a lot of information about my background and the work that I do.
And just what would they put into LinkedIn?
They can just search by my name, Leah R. Younger, or Younger Psychology.
And it's Leah.
That's right.
I would like to thank our guest on Law You Should Know. Keep in mind, whatever you've heard is not meant to be psychological or legal advice, but just information. For attorneys looking for CLE credit, the code is NY1985. That's NY1985. And you can get credit through the Nassau Academy of Law. If you missed any part of the program or want to recommend it to others, the podcast can be found at nccradio.org. And please join us next week at this same time for another program on Law You Should Know here on 90.3 WHPC, the voice of Nassau Community College, also over the internet at nccradio.org.